Hey guys, Dr. Snellgrove here. Just wanted to do a quick overview, chatting about some of the stuff in our early reading, starting with the info on page 15. It's one of those things where it starts at the very bottom of 15 and then goes into the top. And I think I was transparent at the beginning. Like, this is my first rodeo with this specific kind of class. And you might be like, oh God, why is he teaching this? One of the reasons, though, is that I actually do a lot of this stuff. When I'm not teaching, I am a freelance writer, entertainment journalist for Entertainment Weekly, Giant Freaking Robot, a bunch of others. So these are things that I have to do, like to be a professional writer for different organizations. I have to plan these documents. There are visual elements like, all right, gotta get everything just right in, Word perfect before I hit publish on this blog, all this fun stuff. So I was like, oh, hey, I do feel like I have certain insight into some of this. And so I found myself really nodding along almost right away at the beginning on page 15, because the first thing is understand your readers. And it's literally, as a professional writer, it's the first thing I need to know is who's going to be reading this. All right. And there are two basic ways. I hope this doesn't sound snobby. This is the way my clients normally do it. There are two basic ways to describe that. One is by describing their education level, and the other is by describing their level of knowledge of the product or service, basically. So it's like, it sounds snobby, but, why should you need to know their education level? Dr. Snellgrove, just being an elitist snob. Well, if you don't know, the average reading level in America is 8th grade. So it literally determines, like, all right, I am going to have to write in a certain way. I have a client that every single thing I write, they run it through this online assessor. And if it's higher than a 9th grade reading level, they shoot it back to me. Like, no, sir, you are writing for people at a certain, educational level. And if you take out too many 50-cent words or whatever, you're going to drive them away, and nobody's going to read this, and nobody's going to buy the product, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then the other thing is, how familiar are they with this? Is this somebody that's like hearing about a product for the first time, or whatever it is that you're writing about? It's like, okay, well, I got to keep that in mind. I have to figure out, how do I introduce this to somebody that maybe has never heard of it before? That's going to be very different than writing about it for somebody that's, oh yeah, I've been using this product for years, but I need now to understand new applications. So depending, on, if you're a tech writer somewhere, you don't always have control over exactly what you're writing about, the angle you need to take. But depending on audience level awareness, that's the difference between a let me introduce you to it kind of article and a let me explain tips and tricks with it kind of article, et cetera, et cetera. All right. They also get into going into page 16, like, what are the goals here? The goals in writing. And I know we are early in the book, so you might already be rolling around my goals in writing and blah, blah, blah. But like at an institution level, that's quite literal, right? The idea of, okay, so let's take something very simple. Like if you're a cynical person, you're probably sitting here like, they all want to sell stuff, Dr. Snellgrove. How complex could that actually be? I guess I could make it visual. Let's see here. What'd you do in class today? I watched an old man try to find an image online. It's a thrill a minute. Ooh, that's good. That's visual. I like it. All right, open in new tab. Expand that. Sorry, the text is gonna look a slight bit fuzzy, but it's all good. All right, so yeah, the company, wants you to buy stuff, so if you're the writer for the company, sometimes this is your, a lot of the writing I do is just trying to get people to buy the product or reach out and ask questions about the product. But this is something that a lot of companies use. It's like, all right, well, buyers or potential customers, they come to you at different points in this funnel, right? So you see at the tippy top, so what I was talking about earlier, like someone's never even heard of this, that person is not likely to just suddenly make a sale. That's the salesman's dream, right? They go from never having heard of it to I got to buy it right now. But most of the time it's like, all right, they have to encounter this, product, this company in multiple different levels and different ways, and they move through this funnel. So early on, for certain audiences, at least, our goal might be to, I'm gesturing like y'all can see me pointing to them, but to move them from awareness to interest. Like, hey, let me tell you what this is, and let me, say some stuff where you might find it interesting. You might be, pondering this. And then the pondering over time, maybe they see a commercial, maybe they come back in a store, maybe they just read more of the stuff you're writing. The idea is to get them to go from interest to evaluation, where they start honestly considering, like, we have needed a new air conditioner for the past couple months. Maybe we should go with this company, but there's some other stuff out there. So evaluating the options, and then moving further in, it's negotiation of price and terms of purchase, followed by a decision to buy. So most of the time, I guess it depends on what you're buying. Negotiation is not always an option. As a consumer, it's usually just, do I really want to take the plunge, take my wallet out? And then, of course, you buy the item, you make the sale. For some companies, they consider the sales funnel to end at that point. Like, well, we funneled them into a sale. That was the whole job. That was my attempt to do a funnel, not my attempt to do a dab. I want to state that for the record. But here, is a greater philosophy, the more, I think, prevalent philosophy now of, well, you want them to come back. You want to retain customers. So renewal of interest and repurchase of the product. That's how you get to like drip emails, SMS marketing, and all sorts of fun stuff. I'm sure we'll chat about in the fullness of time. Y'all like, that man is on point 2 of page 2. My God, I do need to speak this up. Okay. Other stuff in here, understand your role in the organization as a writer, how your role should be reflected in what you write. So I don't think I'm blowing anyone's mind by saying that like tech writing is often largely invisible. Like the client wants you to do this, you work for this company, and, it's not exactly your name getting stamped on there, but sometimes it is, and I might be like, okay, what is my role? How do I approach this? Am I meant to be invisible, functionally like a ghostwriter, something I constantly do as a writer, or is it to be more prominent and maybe lend my own authority? By the time you are like an executive for a company, what you say really carries weight. And of course, that affects how you say it and what you say, I hope. Determine the content by considering your reader's frame of reference and your purpose in writing. So we've been talking about that. Just so the combination of what am I trying to do? What do they know about us? And, what are their goals? What are our goals? How do we get these guys together? So I'll go through this a little quicker, but I do like this second big point here on page 16. Keep in mind that business readers want answers now. So the idea that they have the sample, like the who, what, when, where, like, what is it? Do I have to read it? How does it affect me? What will I have to do? What are the main ideas? These are things that we're all naturally curious about when we start reading stuff, or even, seeing like somebody puts on a PowerPoint presentation. You will probably find yourself saying, what is this? Do I have to read this? Does it affect me? As somebody who's going to a faculty meeting later today, I'm curious about all these things on a pretty regular basis. So just keep in mind that you don't want to string readers along. I would argue you don't want to string any readers along, but in particular, a business audience. It's like they came to pay, they came to play. They want you to get to the point. All right. And then as they point out the obvious at the halfway point of page 16, if you answer the questions at the beginning of the document, readers are more likely to continue reading. So it's this is a whole, it's not even a big section, but it's a section that's emphasizing a very important point. A lot of times, writers consciously or even unconsciously, they're stringing readers along as a technique. They're thinking, they're going to keep reading more because they want to get to the answer. But they not really, they just gotta get frustrated. And depending on how they're engaging with your writing, they back out. A lot of writing is online writing. So a lot of these companies, forgive me, y'all may already know this, they keep track of what's known as the bounce rate, which is like, okay, on average, how long are visitors on this site before they hit the back button? So your goal is to keep them there as long as possible. with your writing. So the argument here is if you go ahead and give them the most valuable info, if you go ahead and answer the questions up front, they're likelier to keep on keeping on. It's like, all right, you have done them a service. You know, they're going to keep reading because they want to know more. But if they think that you're just being coy and not volunteering important info, they're just going to back out. Okay. So they have a thing bottom of 16 going into 17. Determine your readers and their perspectives. We've been talking about this, but how much do your readers know about your topic? You know, looking back at that sales funnel, are you writing for somebody? Are you writing to raise awareness? You know, would that be like your company goal? Or are you writing to convert, to drive customers into a purchase? That's, you know, very different audiences require very different kinds of writing. All right. And then do your readers have expertise in the area? We talked about that, but we'll say just a little more, like the more they know, the more specific you can be. You know, if you're at, if you've got a customer or reader that is at the awareness level and you start dropping a whole bunch of industry insider slang and terms and stuff, they'll instantly be confused and probably turned off. But if you have somebody like I've written for, you know, executive, like C-level people at companies where they're at least nominally, they're thought leaders in this industry. And God, I hate the term thought leader. So they'd be downright insulted if I was turned in something to them. It's like, what is a sales funnel? How do you, you know, it's like, damn it, I already know all this. So what they know determines what you write. All right. So they have some basic stuff on 17, like, you know, do you know much, like, are you writing for audiences in different cultures? This is very common in tech writing in the sense that, like, you might be working for companies that do business all around the world. And the idea of like, hey, I'm writing for an audience in Japan. I'm writing for an audience in Germany. It's like, you know, someone else might be translating even some of what you're doing for these other companies, but you need to keep in mind certain things. It's usually like, you know, cultural idioms, phrases, you know, things that might make sense in a Western culture might not make sense in an Eastern culture. In some cases, you know, phrases make a lot of sense in, like, you know, the southern parts of America don't necessarily make sense in the northern parts of America. I always think about Rogue from the old 90s X-Men cartoon, where she describes someone as looking nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. You know, as somebody from Lower Alabama, like, I get it, Rogue, but I don't know if that idiom necessarily translates to every culture. All right, so I don't know if your book explicitly gets into this, but one of the things that you might deal with as a writer is the idea of a customer persona. So we talked about how you're writing sometimes for different kinds of customers, different stages of the sales funnel, or different stages of the customer journey, whatever you want to call it. And so sometimes companies will put together what they call personas. And it's like, we have taken all of this demographic info that we know, like our average customer is 35 to 45 years old, female, college educated, you know, all this stuff. And so they'll take it a step further and create a persona, which will be like, oh, hey, this is Lisa. She graduated college in 2010. She has 2 kids and lives in the suburbs and blah, blah, blah. And it sounds kind of silly, but the idea is to help writers and marketers, like, literally put a face to the audience. Because I don't know if I'm telling on myself here, but you give me a bunch of statistical demographic info, my eyes glaze over. You know, kryptonite for the English professor would, of course, be math related. You know, if you give me numbers like, oh no, but if you're just telling me like, hey, Dr. Snellgrove, you're writing an article for, you know, single mothers who are college educated and looking for, you know, ways to enjoy their free time. I was like, okay, got it. You know, give me something super specific to go off of, and it works much better for me, at least. All right. And I think we've talked about most of this. I mean, I hope you read, you know, it's not much reading. I hope you're reading the chapters and everything. I just don't want to talk too much. I probably already talked too much on this video. Now, they do get into, oh, we don't get to get into that. Sorry, I'm skipping ahead now. This next part is shorter. It starts on page 37, recognizing unethical communication. And I'm not going to spend much time on this. And honestly, most of the section I think is like examples, like case document 1, case document 2, that kind of thing, which is very useful. But what I like about this section for you as writers is it has a lot of stuff that you may or may not have been concerned about before as a student. And now it's stuff that you need to be concerned about, like when the shoe is on the other foot. You're a professional writer for a company. These are things that, will matter in a different way and maybe matter more intensely than they did before. So for instance, copyrightable material. Yeah, the very first thing they tell you, like the bottom half of page 37, plagiarism and theft of intellectual property. All right, the P word, right? When you're a student, it's like, oh God, did I forget to cite something? Did I accidentally plagiarize? Yada, yada. But then when you are, a writer for a company, it's like you have to worry about the idea of other people stealing your writing or anyone else's writing in the companies. Basically, you may be in a position where you are responsible partially or even wholly for the security of important intellectual property. And so they have like a list down here, copyrightable materials. It could include like books, journals, software apps, computer programs, video recordings, audio recordings, illustrations, digital stuff, even emails. I have these cheerful little reminders every year that any email that I send through our college email is technically state property. I'm technically a state employee, and you better believe I'm mindful of how I handle information that way, and frankly, what I do and do not send via email. Trademark. Are you, I mean, it's kind of a high pressure thing, but like you could be in a position to, make sure the trademark is possibly enforced. And that is more important than you might think. Here is a wild ass example from Hollywood. Have you noticed in movies and television shows, almost every time somebody is watching a scary movie on TV, they're watching the George Romero Night of the Living Dead. All right, why are they doing that? That movie is in the public domain. And I know what you're thinking. That movie is a bajillion years old. Of course it's in the public domain. However, it's been in the public domain from the beginning because somebody forgot to put the trademark, properly on screen the very first time, like it was shown in theaters. Hand to God. So it's very important. George Romero was very cranky about that. Got to meet him one time before he died. Very funny. Trade secrets, designs, formulas, lists, methods, patterns, processes that offer a competitive advantage over parties who don't have the same info. Like you better believe the ingredients for Coca-Cola, carefully guarded trade secret. The corporation is very, circumspect about who has access to that at all. And the people that have that specialized information have to be super careful about sharing it with anyone, letting that information out. And, because there's a lot of reasons that would be problematic, but as they put here, it gives the other company a competitive advantage. What does Pepsi do once they have the Coke formula? Well, maybe they make some good soda for once. Sorry, I'm just not a Pepsi guy. All right, invention, a new and unique design, device, method, or process that is subject to patent protection. All right, so inventions, I mean, I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but that could be particularly important, like if that information gets out before it is properly patented, right? So you can go, if you want to go look up like Tesla versus Edison for exactly how important that can be. Tesla, the inventor, not the cars that are going to self-drive and kill me someday. Tangible research property. Tangible items created during research related to copyrightable materials, trademark, trade secrets, inventions. I mean, all this stuff. I mean, so basically, long story, not even remotely short. I'm not going to get into the whole chapter, which is also short and filled with useful examples. But when you start working as a professional, technical writer somewhere or writer of any stripe for an organization, you are partially responsible for safeguarding that. And so the point of this chapter is really, I mean, they didn't phrase it this way, but it's really trying to get you to see intellectual property as property. Like if you start working for a company and someone tells you, hey, don't steal the stapler, you might be like, no shit, I shouldn't steal from the company. But you might not think anything of like leaving your monitor turned on or something. It's like, well, the the janitorial staff at night, the custodial staff maybe can now view any weird trade secrets on your computer because of a simple thing that you did. So you might not have thought of that as direct as just stealing something from the company, but you've opened the door for potential theft, and that and any number of other things that can happen. All right. Whew. So I'm going to try to keep recording these videos. I hope they're useful for you. It's the kind of things that you'd be hearing in a lecture if we were a face-to-face class. I hope you're finding the lectures useful. I hope you're finding the textbook useful. And you guys will hopefully know the drill by now, because I sign off all my videos like this for online classes. If you have any questions at all, feel free to email me or feel free to text me at 863-835-2399. Y'all have a good one.